It's time to get set up for one of my all-time favorite markets, so come along with me while we get set up for Blue Genie May Market 2025. We're going to turn this ugly wall into this beautiful, gorgeous display of color and products. It is Blue Genie load-in day, and because this is a really fun kind of market that we do, I decided I would take you guys along for the ride. So we're in the car right now on our way there to set up, but for those of you who don't know, Blue Genie is an event that happens in Austin twice a year. There's a December market that happens daily throughout the full month of December, and then there is a May market that happens weekends in May. So we are on our way to set up for the May market right now. So this is a different kind of market from any other event that we do. So we have an 8x8 wall that we are going to set up a whole bunch of product on. That's what we're doing today. We have an allotted time from 10 to 6 for setup. And once we finish that setup, we're gonna leave and we don't have to deal with it at all with making sales or anything like that. It's one big building. They have a whole bunch of these 8x8 walls and then other sized walls as well. And then hundreds of businesses are set up there. And you just shop from all the businesses at once, and then you go to a central checkout location. So all of our products have a special unique number that we get credited with the sales for, and then we don't even have to be there. So then the show takes a set commission. I think for the spring show, it's 40%, I believe. At the winter, there's like tiers depending on how much you sell. The winter show was insane for us. We did $18,000 with that 4x8 wall over the span of 5 or 6 weeks, and we didn't even have to be there. So that was really nice. I've been told that the May market is a lot more chill, which makes sense, but we've never done it before, so I don't really know what to expect. We do have a bigger wall this time. We have an 8x8 instead of a 4x8, so that's exciting. So we're on our way to set up. In the car we have a bunch of 4x4 plywood panels and then a whole bunch of other things for the display, and then we have all of the product with my tag on it. So we've spent the past week prepping all of the product for the show and getting the display ready. I set up a full trial run in my parents' shop because I'm a visual person and that's the easiest way for me to figure it out. So because I've done all of that, we're hoping that the setup will go pretty well. If everything goes to plan, we'll be able to just set up and go home, but if needed, we can make a trip to like Lowe's or Walmart or anything like that. So I will see you guys when we get there. Okay, we have officially arrived at Blue Genie. We have all of the display stuff towards the back of the van and the product towards the front, so it's nice and sorted for load-in. We do have a bit of a trek, so Trey is in charge of carrying all of the large stuff while I carry all the small stuff. I also brought my trusty collapsible dolly with me, so you'll see that a lot in the video. This is what it looks like inside of Blue Genie. This is our wall, and you can see that it is pretty torn up from artists before us, but we will be covering it with my display and products. So while I load my dolly, let me tell you about my history with Blue Genie. I applied to them for the first time in 2022 and they rejected me. I applied again in 2023 and they rejected me. I applied in 2024 and they finally accepted me. This market is super competitive and getting into it was such a dream, and hopefully I'm in it for years and years to come. I love this market so much. Everyone in Austin knows what it is. Now back to what you're seeing on screen. We had disaster strike pretty early on in the day. I dropped this acrylic shelf and it ended up breaking on the corner. Luckily, we always take my box of Mary Poppins tools with me, and I had super glue in there, so I was able to make a fix on this shelf. It wasn't pretty, but it was going to be covered up by product, so it wasn't really that big of a deal, and then we were off and running again. With that little mishap taken care of, the first order of business was covering the ugly freaking wall. So there are a few ways that the show allows you to do this. You can either bring in your plywood like we did and have it like pre-painted or something like that, or you can bring in fabric or butcher paper and cover the wall that way and staple it there. A lot of people also cover the wall with pegboard, things like that. The one thing we cannot do is use like wallpaper or anything sticky, but I choose this route
layout for my booth because I'm able to figure out the layout at home in my parents' house without needing to be at Blue Genie physically. So then once it's time to set up, it's a lot easier because I already have all of the layout figured out. Now you'll see the benefit of this plywood come to life right now because we have all of our display pieces laying out, and all I have to do is line them up with the holes that already exist on the plywood instead of sitting there and needing to take measurements and get things level and all that jazz. So it makes the setup a whole lot faster. You'll also notice that my corner neighbor is already set up, and this is because Blue Genie load-in takes place over 4 days. They stagger everyone's load-in so that we're not stepping on each other. So now you're just going to see us getting our base ready of my booth, and I'm just going to chat a little bit about my decisions for the display. So right now I'm setting up the apparel cubbies, and we had to make a decision last year between folded and hanging apparel, and ultimately I decided on folded apparel because we could fit more product out, which meant more sales, even if that meant it was going to get a little bit messy. And honestly, it worked out fine because we added this thing called a sample cubby, and we put out one of each size of the shirts that people could use to determine their size. And so that is what they ended up unfolding and holding up to themselves, and then they would just grab the shirt that they wanted. We also have to account for the fact that we aren't actually there, so anything that is going up on the wall is completely fixed. So on the cubbies, Trey is attaching wall brackets, so if someone pulls on one of those bases, it won't come apart from the wall. And then when I set up the pegboard, I'll end up using some mounting putty to keep everything in place. And then everything else is fixed to the wall with screws. Like, you cannot move anything. Long story short, I worked in retail for 5 years before I started my business, and because of that, I know how much customers can mess up displays. So in the setup process, I really try to control as much as we can so that things don't get so messed up from us not being there. Because Blue Genie does have employees that walk around and fix things, but no one's gonna care as much as you do. So I like to think that being a little bit more thorough during our setup helps keep the display looking nice in the long run. So you can see that I'm a big fan of pegboard. I always use it in my markets, whether it's Blue Genie or a pop-up show. And this is because I have to use my sticker ledges with pegboard, so it's an obvious solution for Blue Genie stickers as well. I also end up putting pins, notepads, drink sleeves, and wristlets on the pegboard. And then I chose a dry erase board to display the magnets, which I thought was pretty clever because it's a magnetic material. The one requirement that Blue Genie has for our displays is that we usually have to share a corner with our neighbors. And so anything that we place in our booth has to fit within the 45-degree angle. So you can see that green tape on the floor, and that is what my stuff has to stay within. So basically all that means is that anything that I put in the corner needs to be really short and narrow, while things that go out towards the aisle can stick out. So that's why we have the apparel at the aisle and then that really thin dry erase board in the corner. The final piece of the puzzle for the Blue Genie display was our coloring book pockets, and these are actually clear mail organizers that I bought from Target last year. I really like these because they're clear, so you can see all the product that's in them, and they hold about 12 coloring books, which is a really solid amount. And then under that, we end up putting a shelf that holds some business cards of mine, and then we have more hanging apparel. And I decided to double expose the apparel, both folded and hanging, in order to help with keeping things neat, with my thought process being that people may pick up the hanging thing before they unfold the folded shirt. Now it's time to move on to the display at the top. I knew it would be a whole lot easier to do when there wasn't any product on the wall, so that's why we end up taking care of this first. So this is just a 4-foot aluminum flat bar that I picked up from Lowe's that I used to hang my banner and the display apparel. Originally my plan for the apparel was to put them on hangers, but I tried and tried to make it work and it just wasn't happening. So I ended up doing my tried and true folded method, but I didn't have enough shirts to do a double layer, so we just did one row and it worked out fine. I'm not necessarily in love with it, but you know, it is what it is. I only had so many designs to work with. I would also like to take this moment to say that everyone should be applauding for me because I steamed these shirts before we headed to Blue Genie. which I never remembered to do. And I was just so proud of myself for making sure they were wrinkle free, because it's just a small detail that I feel like really makes a big difference. I tried to steam our shows at the holiday show last year, and I brought the steamer with me, and then there wasn't an outlet I could plug into, so they just ended up being wrinkled, and it was okay, but I was a little bit sad about it. With the top display done, we just needed to fill up the bottom with all of the product, and I know that sounds simple in concept, but it did end up taking the full afternoon. All of my acrylic pieces were really dirty from just being moved around, so I did take care of wiping those down first. And then I had the picture of the display from my parents' shop that I used to refer to, and this was so helpful because when you put stuff up on pegboard, it's so hard to remember like how many holes need to be separating everything. So I was able to just look at the picture and count and then put the pieces where they belonged. The one thing that I had to do for everything on the pegboard was mount it in place with mounting putty. And this goes back to my point from earlier, because we're not going to be there, and when it comes to pegboard hooks, they can come out of the pegboard when you grab something off of the hook. So I don't want that happening to my customers, so I add a tiny little piece of mounting putty on the back of the pegboard hooks, on the back of the sticker ledges, and in a few other places as well. And this allows everything to stay nice and fixed in place. One thing that I was a little nervous about heading into this setup is that I didn't have the drink sleeves with me whenever I was figuring out the layout, so I actually had no idea if they were going to fit within that spot. Luckily it turned out okay. I was putting out a bunch of unreleased product in Blue Genie this go around, which was really fun for me to do because I love giving people exclusive access to unreleased things. Moving on to more of the pegboard products, it was time to put out the keychains, and this is the most tedious item that we have to prep for this show because the keychains have to be put on backers, which have to then be sleeved, which need little hooks for the pegboards, and then they need their Blue Genie tag as well, and it's just so annoying to prep them, but they do sell really well at Blue Genie, so it's worth it. Again, I put out more unreleased product here, but these items have since come out. So we had the floral semicolon keychain, the silly goose keychain, which has been selling like hotcakes at Blue Genie. We had the Feel Your Feelings keychain and the Take Care of Yourself keychain. And then of course we had all of my other keychains that already existed. I do want to say that I ended up changing this display after we set it up. I swapped out the hooks for a sticker ledge because the keychains just wouldn't hang straight. This was like the first time we had tried displaying them this way, and it was making me crazy that everything was just kind of lopsided. So I'll have to reevaluate that in the future. Next, it was time to move on to the stickers, which these sold really well for us at Blue Genie last year, which I was pretty surprised by because all of the artists have stickers at Blue Genie, so I wasn't expecting them to sell well. We can only fit out so many designs at Blue Genie, so I ended up using sales data from our markets to determine which designs sell best in person, and then I also throw in my favorites as well. Again, for the sake of being thorough, I used mounting putty on these to make sure that they wouldn't fall off, because that is the last thing we want, is a sticker ledge to collapse. I cannot imagine how stressful that would be for the Blue Genie employees if that happened when people were shopping. So I finished up the stickers, and while I was doing that, Trey got the coloring books put out for me, and you will see that we have a little sample coloring book in the front that people can flip through, and then we have wrapped coloring books behind it that people can purchase, and this is just to keep things fingerprint free and keep them looking very nice for purchase. At this point, we just had a few more of the smaller products left, so I was putting out the wristlets and lanyards at the same time that Trey was putting out all the pins on those empty hooks in the top corner. For the lanyards and wristlets, I wanted to be sure to take every design that we had for the Blue Genie market because May is Teacher Appreciation Month, and I thought this would be a really good gift for Teacher Appreciation. Once I finished the lanyards, I moved on to the notepads while Trey did the magnets. The magnets were honestly really hard to arrange because we could not fit them all on the board, but I did not get that on camera. And then I was doing the notepads, like I said, so this is where I was able to cover up our little flub from the morning, and it covered it up perfectly, so that was a relief. I was really excited to be able to put notepads out at our Blue Genie market because I wasn't able to put them out at Christmas time in our 4x8 booth. We just didn't have enough space and I had to cut them, and I honestly think they would have sold really well because notepads are really great stocking stuffers. It was still really hard to decide which designs to bring for the May market, but depending on what the sales data looks like once everything's said and done, I might expand our notepad selection for the 2025 holiday booth, assuming that I get in. And before moving on to apparel, I had one more final touch, which was my sign, again attached to a stand with mounting putty. Then I also put business cards out, so if people like my stuff and they want to shop online, they have the option to do so. And then it was finally time for the last task of the day, which was getting the apparel cubbies ready. And this should have been as easy as throwing them into the cubbies and going home. But unfortunately, I made a fatal error during our prep, and that was thinking that rolled apparel was the way to go. I'm getting ahead of myself here though, because what you see on screen right now is me just folding up the sample cubby that I referenced. So each shirt says sample tee, and then it says the size. And then those little shelf talkers that I was putting on the shelf, they say design is visible around the corner. Please use sample cubby to determine your size. And so far, we've gone up to restock the Blue Genie booth 3 times in May, and the cubbies are staying pretty neat this go around. It also helps that there's not as much foot traffic in May as there is in December, but I do think the hanging apparel has made a big difference. And then this last shirt is what we display on the aisle with the other designs of the shirts. So here you can see all of our rolled apparel and what it looked like, and I really don't think it looked that bad in the bin. So Trey was in charge of putting those out while I was going to be working on the aisle display that shows like the design of the shirt. But you'll see that he puts the reading heart shirts out, and then that is when I was like, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. But what I am doing while he puts those out is wrapping a shirt around a piece of rigid cardboard and then folding it and tucking it under a piece of acrylic, and that way there is a display of the design facing the aisle. So back to my fatal error. Basically, I decided I wanted to try out rolled apparel for Blue Genie this time, even though we did fold it at the holiday season. And my thinking here was that if we rolled them and tied them, people wouldn't be able to mess them up at all, and they would be forced to use the sample cubby or look at the hanging apparel. And I also thought we would be able to fit out more inventory this way. I was wrong on the latter aspect. It fit the same amount of product, and other than that, it just ended up being ugly. I did not test this in advance. I just thought it would look fine, and Trey told me he thought it was going to look ugly, and I told him he was wrong, and he was so right. It was so bad. It looked so weird, but we had to try it to know it wouldn't work. But unfortunately, that meant we had to untie, unroll, refold, re-stick every single piece of apparel, and poor Trey had to do most of that, and I still feel bad about this, and it's been like 3 or 4 weeks now since this happened. So we got that taken care of, and then the booth was officially done. I felt so proud of us for getting this done on the day of our load-in, because last holiday season, I barely finished getting the base done on our load-in day, and then I ended up needing a full extra day to complete the load-in as well. Everything came together so nicely. Like I said, at this point in time, the show has now been open for a few weeks, and people have been loving the products. We got a mid-show sales report back, and we've sold about $4,000. I'm so thankful to everyone in Austin who has been showing up for our booth. Anyone who shops it tells Blue Genie to keep us there in future years. So I'm really hoping that we will get to be coming back to the show year after year. But even if we don't, I hope this was a fun little vlog for you to see. If you're in the Austin area, I hope you'll take the time to check out my booth at Blue Genie Art Bazaar on Airport Boulevard. And no matter where you are, be sure to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next video.
How quickly would you get annoyed if I only spoke in riddle?
Literally right away, I think.
I am small, nearly non-existent. What am I?
My patience.
Oh, you're good at this. Alright, you passed my test, you can move on.